Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by to check out my videos. And as always, if you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for continuing to watch my content and for supporting my channel. I really appreciate it. So I announced a couple days ago that I am going to be doing a buddy read with Steve Donahue of Dan Jones' new novel, Essex Dogs. And sort of our formula for that read along, we were going to be doing one part of the novel per first 3 weeks of February because there are 3 parts to the novel. And so this first week we were reading part 1. And so I thought that I would do just a quick discussion on some of my feelings of part 1 of Essex Dogs. So one thing that we did realize after posting our announcement videos was that the American copy or the American edition of Essex Dogs will not be released until February 14th. Although it's already been released in other parts of the world. And so that sort of caused a bit of a conflict with having our audience be able to read along with us, at least our state, United States audience, our European audience is okay because the book's already released there. So what we decided to do was until we get to the US release date, we'll be very careful sort of skirting around any spoilers or anything like that, just so that we don't ruin the book for those who will be starting to read it on the 14th. And so today I'm not going to really talk very much in detail at all about part 1, except for just a little bit of sort of my first reaction, my first thoughts to the novel. That way I don't spoil anything, and then down the road we can talk a little bit more in detail once once everyone who wants to read can get their hands on a copy of the novel. So right off the bat, my first thoughts of part 1 of Essex Dogs was I'm very impressed with Dan Jones's fiction writing ability, and I'm not super surprised by the fact that he is a great fiction writer because he is a fantastic narrative nonfiction writer, and writing narrative nonfiction in some ways is more difficult than writing fiction because you're dealing with real life situations, and then you have to create a sense of sort of being there for your reader, whereas in fiction, everything is sort of at the writer's control. But he has a masterful pen, essentially, I guess you could say, with fiction, and I found it really well written, very well paced, very engaging. Part 1 is about 140 pages, but it only took me about half a day to read, just because it kept pulling me back in and sort of forcing my attention to want to find out what happens next. We get introduced in part 1 to our main sort of band of brothers, if you will, the Essex Dogs, which is a group of 10 men ranging from mid-40s all the way down to a very young teenage boy, and sort of from all different walks of life. And they are essentially mercenary troops who are being paid to spend 40 days in France with the invading forces of King Edward's army as part of the 30 Years' War. So we're set in the summer of 1346, I believe. And so we get a really nice setting, a little bit of an introduction into the conflict that's been going on between England and France, a little bit of why King Edward is in France, sort of why the Essex Dogs have been hired hands to come and help with the invasion. So we get a little bit of the historical background on that, which is fantastic. And again, that ties into Steve's personal book club that he's doing, where they are reading Barbara Tuchman's A Distant Mirror, which is a history of the 1300s. So it sort of goes, again, hand in hand with that very nicely, which is what we hoped for. So we get some nice groundwork laid in part 1, which is really nice. We get introduced to all of our characters. We don't get a lot of background on our characters. We're really just sort of thrown in the moment with them. So we will be learning about them as the book goes on. In part 1, we do already learn one fairly important fact about a particular character. Again, I'm not going to say what or whom because I don't want to spoil it. I'll talk about it once I'm sure that it's not a spoiler anymore. But little pieces are starting to be put in place in part 1. It's really enticing. I'm enjoying it a lot. So I read part 1 today, and then we'll be doing part 2 and part 3 next week and the week following, and then we'll hopefully end with a live stream. And so most likely next Sunday I will post a video talking about part 2. I'll try to keep those on the weekends as much as possible, and hopefully that will be that I'll be able to keep that up, and I think I should be able to. But that's just a couple of my thoughts on part 1 of Dan Jones's Essex Dogs that I'm reading along with Steve Donahue. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to leave any comments down below that you would like to, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.